Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. You remember the boys from Brazil, the cloning apocalypse, where Nazis were being cloned? Well, that sounded awfully bad, but actually there's something much worse. Much, much worse. Stacy?
Max, they've created the perfect bankster. Remember a few weeks ago you said Bob Diamond, the rat face? Yes. Well, apparently they have a Jamie Dimon jellyfish. It's a jellyfish robot. If you take a look at this video here, that's a jellyfish robot made from silicone and the living cells from a rat heart.
Rat heart cells in a jellyfish. So there's no spine, but the heart of a rat. Now, is that not Jamie Dimon? And it's a robotic version of Jamie Dimon. No spine, but the heart of a rat. And he's a robot, like algorithmic trading, like high-frequency trading. That's what dominates the global economy, are robotic jellyfish, rat-hearted Jamie Dimon clones. That's why we're in this mess.
Well, Max, I have a dosimeter here. This is my little financial dosimeter. And it tells me when I'm getting too close to any financial crimes, any financial toxins, any financial fraud, manipulation, inflation, deflation. And I want to use that as an analogy for the global financial system, what's going on. We turn to Japan right now, and this headline here, Japan probes underreporting of Fukushima radiation dosage. Japan's health ministry said it would investigate reports that workers at the stricken Fukushima nuclear power plant were urged by a subcontractor called Build Up to place lead around radiation detection devices called dosimeters in order to stay under a safety threshold for exposure.
Right, so they were exposing these workers to lethal doses of radiation, having them cover their dosimeters so they wouldn't even know that they were being soft-killed by TEPCO, Tokyo Power, killing the workers. But that's, of course, not a dosimeter. That is a 1-ounce silver eagle of pure silver. And I get your point, though, that the only defense against fraud on the scale of a robotic, spineless, rat-hearted jellyfish like Jamie Dimon is silver. And, here's what I'm telling you out there. There's about 20 or 30 trillion in cash socked away in this untaxed shadow economy. You know who you are. Put 5% of that to work in silver today.
These dosimeters, just because you cover it with lead and the readings don't say that the men are being exposed to high levels of radiation, the fact is a few years later they suddenly drop dead. And this is what we've seen over the years, over and over and over, from financial regulators, from central bankers, from treasury secretaries around the world. Everybody is engaged in basically covering our dosimeters, our financial dosimeters, with lead. So whether it's artificially manipulating the LIBOR rates to rigging the Dow Jones from the plunge protection team, interest rates, setting them too low. Everything is to tell you that it's much safer to go into the market, to enter the housing market, to enter the equity markets, to buy some bonds, to buy the dollar, to hold sterling, to hold the euro. All our dosimeters are manipulated and covered with the equivalent of financial lead in order to keep you, the population out here, from protecting yourself.
Right, it's called bad price signals.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's my thought about what you just said. This problem of the global financial crisis is not a problem of macroeconomics. So all the Rubinis and Stiglitz and Nobel Prize winning economists, Krugmans, their macroeconomic solutions are worthless because this is not a macroeconomic problem. This is a microeconomic problem. Microeconomics concerns itself with things like price discovery and supply and demand issues, curves, meeting, and what the prices that generated by these two things meeting in the open, free market society. And what you've just described, and I completely agree with you, is that the price discovery mechanism, the microeconomic plateau upon which this global economy sits, is totally corrupted. And this is the heinous, insidious bit about LIBOR, is that it's the macroeconomic grain of sand upon which is built civilization, which is now dissolving because it is unanchored to anything but the fraudulent intent of those who are manipulating that price in ways that tilt the free market pool table of wealth in ways where all the balls of wealth go into the pockets of the few. You see, it's microeconomics. It's not macroeconomics.
And as we see the pickup and the decline going on in the global financial collapse, this is partly, I think, because we see this massive group of baby boomers starting to retire in the U.S., and they've had this little pot of their pension funds over there off to the side, and the dosimeters have told them, oh, don't go looking, don't go peeking inside your pension fund to see what's there, because the dosimeters are telling you everything is all okay, everything is fine. But now that they're cashing out and starting to have to collect, we're seeing over and over now that pension funds are saying, oops, we're 50% underfunded. Everything is being exposed.
Put it another way, okay, this price action, LIBOR, various indexes, these give the lay of the land. It gives you an idea of the, if you're sailing through the sea of liquidity, that would be your barometric pressure, your compass. But, what does it tell you when interest rates in some of these European countries for 2-year paper or less is negative? Okay, that tells you that the entire financial system has capsized.
Yeah.
And that you are now underwater. The ability to pay back the debt is now zero. That's not going to happen. That's what negative interest rates tell us, is that the 500 trillion or 800 trillion in debt that is plaguing the global economy will not be paid ever. That means either more distortions and austerity for behalf of the ruling class, or B, revolution, or C, global forgiveness of all this debt. Those are the only 3 outcomes. No growth scenario, no Keynesianism, no austerity is going to work. That's now finished. That's over. If you think that's going to happen, you're brain dead.
I might add that many commentators out there, and Keynesians like Krugman, are saying those negative interest rates are a sign that the market wants these governments to borrow more.
Well, he's an ideologue that, to get it back to the top of the show, he's totally trapped in his academic theory, and no matter how much reality knocks that theory to the ground, he's doubling down on his faulty assumptions. If he were managing money, he would have gone bankrupt decades ago, and we would never have heard from Paul Krugman ever again. But because he's an academic, and he's a journalist, and he's a writer, and he can write all kinds of nonsense all day long without any accountability whatsoever, people buy into this nonsense, even though it's theoretically preposterous, and it's, on a practical basis, completely meaningless.
But talking about microeconomics, we have the micro problem of banksters who have become a global macro problem. They're very interlinked. Their little crimes here and there are adding up to a big macro global problem. Corrupt allegations, major fraud inquiries, a Senate probe into deals with drug-running gangsters in Mexico, and a luxury yacht. Welcome to the world of banking 2012. So police are poised to press charges against several HBOS bankers and consultants after a 2-year investigation into large-scale fraud and corruption involving the Edinburgh-based bank. The probe, codenamed Operation Hornet, is described by a police officer involved as the largest fraud investigation of its type in the UK.
This week.
Well, it's probably the only one. They could say it's the largest because it's the only fraud investigation going on.
True, in the UK, that's right. They're not big on that whole investigating fraud thing.
So this case involves the high-risk division of Bank of Scotland from 2002 to 2007. Now, this part of Bank of Scotland was run by a guy named Lyndon Scourfield, and HBOS is now owned by Lloyds, following Gordon Brown intervening and forcing Lloyds to buy HBOS, which now meant that Lloyds had to be bailed out by the UK taxpayer, which now owns 41% of Lloyds. But anyway, the crime, the fraud pile, the toxic jellyfish that the British population now owns, started with Lyndon Scourfield when he required small businesses as a condition for getting a loan to employ an independent consultancy company specializing in turning around troubled businesses. This was Keiser Corporate Services. It was alleged that a number of businesses ended up in more debt than before Keiser got involved. In many cases, the company's total borrowings from HBOS increased tenfold within a couple of years of David Mills, who owned Keiser, getting involved. He forced them into all these debts, basically using this as a way to asset strip.
Right, this is that banking model of taking on these huge debts, getting the government to bail you out, and in turn acquiring assets for pennies on the dollar, which has migrated over to the geopolitical arena. So this is why Greece is going bankrupt. It's because bankers are loading it up with debt to strip its assets. Same thing with Spain. Same thing with Italy. Again, it's not a macroeconomic problem. It's more of a microeconomic problem because the microeconomics of price discovery are being co-opted by the jellyfish, spineless, rat-hearted Jamie Dimons and H-Boss and Lloyd's banking. Of course, everyone knew in 2008 that the biggest problem was the too big to fail problem. But coming out of 2008, the too big to fail got even too bigger to fail or even more. So, you know, all these banks have consolidated even more. They've gotten monstrously too big to fail.
You know, this is a macro problem because this is the time and time again, this every single bank we see, whether it's HBOS, whether it's Lloyd's, whether it's HSBC, whether it's JP Morgan, whether it's Goldman Sachs, whether it's Bank of America, whether it's Citigroup, whether it's Deutsche Bank, whether it's Crédit Agricole, whether it's Société Générale, what they've done over and over is the same thing. They take out the assets of all these small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the backbone of the capitalist system, of our economies. More people are employed by small and medium-sized enterprises than by these too big to fails. There's a long list of small companies that this guy destroyed through his crony sort of situation here.
Right, well, same thing with Malcolm Glazer and Manchester United. They loaded it up with debt, paid themselves a huge multi-billion-dollar dividend, and now to try to pay off that debt, they're going to go public, but that stock will end up in pension accounts and be left to die. So 5 years from now, it'll be worth down 90% from where it started. So that's another huge global thieving campaign.
Well, of course, all of these crimes from the banking sector are allowed and overseen and aided and abetted by the Financial Services Authority. One of the companies I referred to, the long list of British companies that have now gone insolvent due to this scheme, a director of one of the victimized companies alleged the FSA's main agenda has been to try and cover this thing up since it exposes the catastrophic failures in its own approach to regulating the banking sector. What have they done about this? Sweet FSA.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there are no regulators that are in a position to do anything about this.
Well, no, Max, because actually they are. They are enabling it. They're helping it. They're engineering and causing it because, remember, they want to cover the dosimeters with lead. They want you to not know that your system in which you're swimming with all the jellyfish is corrupt and you're going to be stung by their little tentacles.
So they're like the mayor in that movie Jaws that's trying to tell everybody it's okay to go in the water when the shark. That's the role that they play.
Exactly. But, you know, all of these jellyfish, spineless jellyfish with rat hearts, they end up singing each other because there is a bit of poetic justice here. David Mills, the guy involved with Keiser who was devastating all these small and medium-sized enterprises across the country, well, he was the biggest individual creditor of collapsed investment firm MF Global, where he had parked £3.65 million.
Well, I think that's going to be what ultimately ends the charade of a global banking system, is that they're so intermingled and intertwined, the fraud collapses on itself, and exactly what you just described. Here's one of the biggest fraudsters who parked his money at another fraudster who went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to see more of that. That's the only thing that's going to stop this nightmare. All right, Stacey Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Matt.
Doug Owen, much more coming away. Stay right there.
Eastern American seaboard. We don't even know what the hell it is.